I wandered aimlessly for hours. My rations, now all gone, were the least of my concerns, as my survival was far more contingent upon escape than it was sustenance. And yet, as I wandered through the faint, ashy mist, it became ever more apparent that I would not see salvation without some kind of divine intervention. It was in the waning moments of my cogency that I heard a voice pierce through the fog. A gravelly, menacing gargle coming from a disembodied source, aimless in nature and therefore impossible to determine from whence direction it arose.
He has come through to our plane to visit.
I frantically snapped my neck in every direction I could to try and identify who or what was garbling this cryptic message. Weak with thirst though, I made it not more than a few footsteps before crying out, the deafening solitude having eroded all of my patience at this point.
I am friend. You were sent by the man with the gray hairs.
I nodded, much to my own dismay, as indeed Nukto did sport thick, shoulder-length gray locks, albeit they a bit tangled and matted. "Please, friend, I need to get back to the village," I asserted.
And why would you seek to retreat to those who have scorned you?
I did not know how to reply to this query, but I did know that this place was not safe, not for me. Trembling now with a combination of fear, hunger, and a sudden onset of chill that had seemingly dropped down upon me like a thick blanket, I merely repeated my plea, attempting but in all likelihood failing to hide my desperation. It was at this time and for the next several hours that my so-called friend had vanished, leaving me to wonder if the short conversation I had just had was nothing more than a product of my collapsing mind. Now sitting, I did little more than attempt to conserve energy. Despite the day turning to night by my hour's count, the lighting in this cursed ditch did not appear affected. It was the same yellowish gray tint, just light enough to see, as if I had stepped into limbo. So, now, in a daze, I weakly counted the pebbles and twigs as I lay on the dried-out ground, wistfully fantasizing about death, unsure if such an experience could even be achieved in my present state. It was as if the cold, dry mist of the hole was feeding off of my life force. I began to rethink the literature that I had read in the Hasda church, rereading it in my mind's eye again and again, trying to better understand the purpose of this place. In a swirl of ticking minutes, I began to question whether I was mistaken in trusting Nukto. Had he betrayed me? Was he some sort of dark wizard? Was I his sacrifice? It was during this spiral of panicked conspiracy that I once again heard the strange voice echoing across the ground, stirring dust as it did, almost as if to prove it was real. And here,
It may be why you and not him. Too much a coward to leap into this place. He sends the white devil.
the laugh that this friend of mine hawked was warm and wet, throaty and heaving as he mocked my foolish agreement. I tried to beg the faceless voice for assistance, but was time and time again met with only the foul laughter and sneering of a madman, as if he were a rancid youth taking the family trauma out on a childhood toy, and I was his to abuse, a weak, fleshy marionette for this supposed ally to taunt and jest. Only when I was at my absolute weakest did I finally see his faint silhouette emerge from the darkened cavern, but not a stone's throw from my trembling body. I could not make out his most basic form, his features hidden in the damp, pale cloud that occupied this awful hole. Cotton-mouthed and worn, I attempted once more to beg for his help. He inched closer, his demeanor nowhere near as playful or jubilant as his jeering had made him seem. Moments later I learned why, for as he shuffled nearer to me, another figure became visible in the blurry foreground of my gaze. A tall, thin, dark figure whose presence, though monolithic in physical appearance, could have filled the entirety of the hall all three of us now occupied.
But the Black Pharaoh has chosen you, and us, and we, and his father will take and hoard.
I lay there, barely able to move as this abhorrent prophecy washed over me. His words were twisted and cryptic, yet they made sense. I could tell that I was in the presence of something awful, some creature so diseased and abject that it defies the very essence of humanity. My thoughts became more frantic. My heart raced as the last available bit of adrenaline pulsed through my system, granting me the strength to stand. I ran, wobbling and stumbling, weak from both hunger and the sheer amount of time I had existed in this hole, a place that I was now sure no person was meant to see or escape. The stabbing pain of hunger faded as my body recognized that these moments would be my final, desperate bid for continued life. I did sprint with my best efforts, but only for a few short moments, so damaged by my conditions that I would trip over my own ankles and knees, which felt loose and disconnected from my remaining skeletal makeup. I tumbled to the ground and looked over my shoulder to see my efforts were in the most cruel act of vain imaginable. There, towering over me, was a crawling chaos so offensive to all of my senses that my immediate reaction was to vomit. This act, sadly, was also for naught, as the lack of food or fluid in my stomach caused only a painful retch, followed by a thin ribbon of yellow bile which burned my throat and scarred my tongue as it drained from me, dribbling onto the ground. A swirling, rearranging set of micro-horrors gazed down at me as if seeing each of my weaknesses and insecurities, silently judging me, waiting for the right moment to disembowel me. I sobbed, out of fear and exhaustion, my tears inching halfway down my cheeks, scarring them as they froze and hardened in their tracks. I wheezed and hiccuped as I simply stared up at the beast, helpless. It was only then that I noticed the smaller, angrier, sniveling little monster that had once called itself my friend. A gray-blue, palish hue to his skin, as if he may have once been human, yet had been stripped of all personhood due to the amount of time he had been forced to spend in this hole. All in an instant, I cobbled a potential explanation for his existence, that perhaps he, like me, had been tricked by this creature of oblivion, that he'd struck a deal of sorts with it, that perhaps he and Nocto were human traffickers of sorts, luring innocent peoples into this terrible place, perhaps to consume them, perhaps just to torture them. And in the moment at which I thought my fate could be no worse, the unholy little goblin opened its mouth to speak a word that I shudder to repeat. A horrible name, a designation so alien that the human mouth may never be able to properly speak it, yet so familiar that I need not ask any more questions to understand that I was in the presence of real, true evil. Having reached what I presumed to be the end of my days, I merely bowed and gave in. It was perhaps by a stroke of luck, perhaps a miracle, or even by design, that I felt a strong, calloused hand grab a thick tuft of my hair, with the addition of a forearm sliding beneath my right tricep and hooking beneath my shoulder. I was yanked upward, flying up out of the hole as if catapulted with the force of a fleet of racehorses. I exploded out of my dank prison, flying backward and falling on top of someone. My eyes squinted as I adjusted to the brightness of the sky, as if I had not seen light in months. Beneath me, Nocto lay, coughing and writhing. In my state of confusion, all I could do was cling to him, so thankful for his intervention. Confused as to how one man could have lifted me from such a deep cavern, and against my better judgment I looked back at the hole that had contained my very sanity for so many hours and days, to find staring back at me little more than a small divot, no more than 3 feet deep and 8 feet wide. Bewilderment rushed from the tips of my toes through the nape of my neck, but that would be my last bit of putrid curiosity. Nocto, much to his credit, hydrated me and helped me walk the many miles back to the village. It was clear that what he had done was against the wishes of the Hadzabi people, who would not look at either he nor I as we limped through the town streets. He would nurse me back to manageable health over the next 48 hours, and then, as silently as I was able, I left the village. I said no goodbyes nor gave any thank yous. The Hadza people did not want to hear any more words spoken by me, nor did I want to share any with them. I have returned to the States, paused my program of research, dropped out of my PhD program. I have no more urge or need to interact with people. I have secured work as a night shift employee at a boxing company. It is there I will labor until my body fails me. It is what I deserve. My hubris plagued me with the desire to explore parts unknown, and my arrogance resulted in the memories of my time in that hole, and of that terrible moment when the feckless ghoul spoke the title of his divine in my presence, aware that it would follow me for all of my days, that it would ruin me, that I would carry knowledge of the great old monster, confirmed by the name his slave uttered just once.
Nyarlathotep.
Nyarlathotep.